Okay, first I'm going to explain the indicator 14, exactly what that is. It is defined by OSEP, the Office of Special Education Programs, in the Part B State Performance Plan and the Annual Performance Report. It's Part B Indicator Measurement Table. Now, I know that's a mouthful, and we're going to go through and break up the categories so that you can better understand what we're looking at. So indicator 14 is the percent of youth who are no longer in secondary school. They had an IEP in effect at the time that they left school, and they were enrolled in higher education within 1 year of leaving high school, enrolled in higher education, or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school, enrolled in higher education, or in some other post-secondary education or training program, or competitively employed, or in some other employment within 1 year of leaving high school. So you see the common factor here is within 1 year of leaving high school. And over the next few slides, we'll dive into the definitions of these A, B, and C categories. Higher education. This means enrolled in higher education as used in that A, B, and C part that I mentioned in the previous slide. Youth have been enrolled in a full-time or part-time basis in a community college. That would be a 2-year program, or college university, a 4 or more year program for at least one complete term at any time in the year since leaving high school. The competitive employment part means that students or youth have worked for pay at or above minimum wage in a setting with others who are non-disabled for a period of 20 hours a week for at least 90 days at any time in the year since leaving high school. And this includes military employment. Other post-secondary education program or training. This means enrolled in other post-secondary education or training, as indicated in that item number C mentioned in a previous slide. These are youth who have been enrolled on a full-time or part-time basis for at least one complete term at any time in the year since leaving high school in an education or training program. And that may include Job Corps, adult education, a workforce development program, a vocational technical school that's not traditionally a 2-year program. Those are the kind of categories that we're talking about here. And then some other employment that's also used in that item number C means that these are youth who have worked for pay or they've been self-employed for a period of at least 90 days at any time in the year since leaving high school. And this includes them working in a family business like a family store, on the farm, ranching, catering services, things along that line.
So I think it's my turn to take over.
Yes,
if
it
you've seen
is.
the overview slide. Okay, this is Kelly, and I did see a question pop into the chat. You will have access to this PowerPoint, and as a matter of fact, the link is right here to where we have posted the information, and so we'll get that to you. If Beverly, I don't know if you can drop that in the chat or not. So the way that we do this, North Carolina is a sampling state, and that's why you're not, for the most part, other than a few districts, called on to do this every year. We are on a 5-year plan, and we have posted the plan for the next 5 years at this link that you see on the slide. So we collect two sets of data. The first one is the exit data. And the data that you will be using is the data that you reported in the fall of 2020 in ECATS. And then we do the survey data, and we'll be going through that survey with you. And that's the information that you will collect when you call your students starting May 17th and going through September 17th. So what data are collected? We collect the exit data, and most of that is provided back to you, or you are able to pull it yourself from your exit count from the fall of 2020. So we're looking at demographic data, disability, race, ethnicity, and then their program data. So their post-school goals and the type of program they attended. When you get into the survey, the questions that you will be asking are related to what Beverly just went over, and that's what are their work and school experiences? Are they being paid? What kind of school are they going to? The number of hours that they work, or the number of hours that they're in school. Are they full-time or part-time? And how long have they been enrolled in the school? So who are our exiters? This is what we're going to be looking at when you verify the data. And I'll just go ahead and tell you, I have already pulled the data and chunked it out by the districts that are going to be required to make these calls this year. And that can be uploaded into your ECATS resources page if that's what you prefer, or you can pull it yourself using the exit count report under reports and special ed. So we're looking at students who are ages 16 above who exited in the 1920 school year. So that's the exit count that you submitted in the fall of 2020. And then they're called between May and September of 2021. So these are students who graduated, dropped out, aged out, or received a certificate, and they have not then returned to school. So our returners may be our dropouts who dropped out after the age of 16, but then changed their mind and re-enrolled in the 2021 school year. So those ones you would not call, and that is a question on the survey where it would end the survey if they said, no, we went back to school. Let's see, I was thinking I was going to say something else here. Oh, and so you are not including in this data set kids who are less than 16 or anyone who may have been moved known to be continuing. So from what we've gone over so far, we just want to open it up, and feel free to unmute your mic and see what questions that you have so far about what we've talked about. And then we'll go into looking at the survey.
I'm sorry, what was the date of starting and finishing? It was May 2021 to when?
May 17th of 2021 through September 17th of 2021. That's the time frame that survey tool will be open for you guys to make your phone calls and provide the data back.
Thank you.
What were you talking about, Kelly, about something being dropped into your resources? I didn't catch that.
So I have already pulled the data for the state, and then I've broken it down by your districts. So I already have your indicator 14 file available to you. And if you would like it, I can upload it into your ECATS instance so that when you log in and you scroll down on that home page to resources, it can be available to you there.
How would we request that? How do you want us to do that?
You can send me an email, and I'll put my email in the chat and request your file.
If you cannot get online, hello? Hello? Yes, I am on, for some reason I couldn't log in, so I'm on the phone. So, could you give us, could you orally give us your number, your email, so because I can't get into the chat right now. I don't know what happened, I can't get in.
My email address is Kelley, Kelley, blas, B-L-A-S, at dpi.nc.gov. And our contact information, as well as the PowerPoint. Beverly, we're going to send this out via email as well.
Yes, Kelly, I think we did talk about sending it out to everyone by email. And I wanted to mention, I also dropped in the chat the definitions in a one-pager format that was something created by the Post-School Outcomes Center a few years back. We'll also send that out. So you'll have kind of a handy-dandy reminder of exactly what that A, B, and C part means.
Okay, thank you.
And just as a reminder, and I'll go back to the overview slide and click this link. On the EC Division website, go to ECATS and reporting. We have posted the resources, including the PowerPoint, a copy of the survey, and then the next 5-year samples. Any other questions right now? Okay. So again, if we do if you do request to have your data posted for you, you would log into ECATS, scroll to the bottom of the main page, and then under Resources General, you will see your indicator 14 once I get it posted. Now, I would respond to your email letting you know that it's there. So looking at our last year data, so this is students surveyed in 2020. We had 2,553. I'm sorry, did somebody have a question? We had 2,553 youth who exited, and 733 or 28%, 28.71% of those responded to the interview. And of those responders, 28.51% were in higher education, 69.99 enrolled in higher education or competitively employed within 1 year of leaving high school. 80.76% of those responders enrolled in higher education or some other post-secondary education or training program, or competitively employed or in some other employment. And we had 19.24% of students who were not engaged. So we always try to give you the previous year's data to kind of see where we're at, and hopefully we'll do a little bit better this year with our responders. We knew that we did go down in 2020 compared to our 2019. We're pretty sure that had to do with COVID. So how are these data collected? We use a Qualtrics survey, and every state determines how they're going to do it themselves. So we have developed a new survey to collect our data for indicator 14, and districts are responsible for entering the data for each student interviewed into the new survey. So let's go ahead and have a look at the survey. I'll open up for me. Okay, so it's pretty straightforward. You have your contacting LEA, and I'll just go through and fill one out. You would enter your PowerSchool number, and that will be on your exit data information. The student's disability and their exit reason. And that information will to you in your exit data. And then you have an option. So if phone rings, you're unable to reach the student, you can select this. I think Beverly will let you know how many. I think we have some feedback. So please mute your phone.
I think you have to star 6 on the phone. Thank you.
I think I got it. Okay. So I think Beverly will share with us how many times you need to contact in order to just say, you know, we're unable to reach them, Or if the student says, no, I really don't want to answer any questions, then you also have that option to select. So was the survey completed? We'll go with yes. And then you start with your questions. Do you go to high school now? And you would only ask that question. Sorry, I'm going to try to mute. Feedback. You would only ask the question if they go to high school now, if their exit reason is dropped out or received a certificate. Otherwise, you just click no, you don't even ask the question. Since leaving high school, have you had a job? They say yes, and go into the description of what their job is. And you have some options. Okay. So if they just work in a store or something like that, you would select in a company, business, or service. Did you have this job for 90 days or 3 full months? And did you work an average of 20 hours a week or more? Did they earn minimum wage? And then you can ask them for a description of their job and how they get paid. And just enter that information there. And then we go into the questions about whether or not they're continuing their education or training. So are they enrolled in classes and attending classes? What type of school are they going to? We've got several different options here. Did they attend a 2-year or 4-year college and complete at least 1 term? And if it's another type of program, did they complete 1 term? And then some open-ended questions about if they said that they are getting other rehab services, what type of program it is, and anything else that they'd like to share. We want to make it like a conversation, so you're talking with them and asking them, you know, their education, their training, and their work. And that would complete the survey. You will have a summary once you complete it. You can download the PDF. It'll open up for you, and you can save that so that you would have a copy of all of your students' information that you received a response on. Are there any questions about the survey itself? Or Beverly, do you have anything you wanted to add?
We did have one question in the chat box. Let me see if I can find it. The question is on the 5-year cycle list. Are those schools students that graduated last year?
No.
Yes.
Sorry, my my unmute and mute wasn't working too good. No, so the new 5-year cycle list that's posted is actually for next year. You guys should have your list for this year. The list that's posted actually starts next year. So it'll be students who graduate in 2021, and then the calls will happen in the 2022 school year, or the summer of 2022. So the new list starting next year. Any other questions about the survey itself? Okay.
Kelly, I did drop a link in the chat box for the survey, and then I think in some upcoming slides, I'll talk to them a little bit more about strategies related to that. So we'll circle back around to it. Let's see, we have a couple of questions coming in. Is the list broken down by school?
I think only for our big 5, is that right, Beverly? We only
Yes.
we only do that. Yes.
Yes. Yes, and I haven't had a chance to look at the new posting on the website, and we actually posted that as a request from the field because folks were wanting to know when their turn was up, and that would kind of help you keep track of it, unless you're the Big Five and you know you're in it every year. So we might be providing that to you on a yearly basis if it's not posted on there. I'll double check that. And
And I
then
will
another,
say that
go ahead.
just in addition to the question about posted or is the list by school. So your exit data will have the school in it. So you would be able to sort it by school. If you needed to separate it out, you wanted, you know, somebody at each school to make those calls, you would be able to do that. But if you are not one of the Big Five, you are expected to try to make contact with everyone that falls into the requirements. So 16 and older, graduated, dropped out, received a certificate, or reached maximum age.
Mhm.
Okay, go ahead, Beverly. I'm sorry.
And then we do have another question, but I'm going to put that one on hold because we're going into that in detail in the next few slides.
Okay.
Okay, me again. So now we're going to talk a little bit about why post-school outcomes are so important. And one of the reasons is because this is something we are required to report as part of our state plans, but also because if we look at IDEA, we see that one of the purposes is that we are to ensure that all children with disabilities have available to them a free, appropriate public education that emphasizes special education and related services designed to meet their unique needs and prepare them for further education, employment, and independent living. So that's why this piece is so important, that's part of our requirement is to prepare students for further education, employment, and independent living. So I'm going to go over some tips for success in the next few slides, and then I'm going to share with you a couple of things that some of you have shared with us along the way, and in hopes that this will help this process go a little easier for you. So here are some things to keep in mind. You will want to, in some cases, utilize social media to locate students because once they leave school, and keeping in mind you're calling them a year after they graduate, they may have moved around and you may need to kind of find out where they are now. And so sometimes tracking them down on social media is one way to do that. Another way to do that is to contact relatives or someone who may know the student. Also, it's helpful to have the folks who are making the calls and gathering the information required to complete the survey. It's helpful if you train them in how to make those calls. And we'll talk about that as I talk about some of the lessons we've learned from this along the way. But you'll also want to be strategic in when you conduct the interviews. If you're calling in the morning and you're finding that you've called twice in the morning and you weren't able to reach them, then that next time you call, you may want to call late afternoon or at a different time so that you can catch them. And that kind of goes into, you know, call at varying times if you can't get them the first time. And then we just ask that before you close out that call, just try one more time to reach them to get the answers to the questions for the survey, because this information is very valuable and helpful to us. And I'll talk about how you can use that in just a minute. So part of the next step reminders is that as you start planning for this calling part, you want to make sure you've identified a contact person as soon as possible. Who's going to be heading up this project? Who's going to be managing, verifying the list? Who's going to be managing, who's going to make the calls? You know, that sort of thing. So that may be you on the call today, or it may be someone else, but it's very important that you get that person established right away so they can begin the planning process of all those pieces. And then you want to make sure that you conduct the interviews and enter in the responses in that survey within the window, which is May 17th through September 17th of this year, 2021. Now, as I'm talking through that, I want to share with you some lessons learned and some of the things that other folks have shared with us. And one has been something that's been, I think, very helpful to other people that I want to share every time. And we learned this little tip from Charlotte Meck. And I think Tracy is on the call, so I'm going to welcome her to chime in after I finish if she would like to do that. One thing that we did learn from them is that when you go to enter in your survey data, you can't enter in part of it and save it and come back and finish it later. You'll really need to enter everything in and then submit. So one of the strategies that we learned is that it's very helpful if you print off a copy of the survey and you identify you record on the printed copy the responses. And then once you have a stack of those completed, then someone can enter in all the completed ones. And one of the things I also wanted to bring to your attention about that printed copy and the question number 10 that Kelly shared with us, that was kind of an open-ended question. We really want you to use that question to help you in your planning, to help you plan PLCs for your teachers, to help you, plan any other way that you can help students who are still currently in school with you have a better post-school outcome. So for instance, I think one of the questions that Tracy shared with me, and again, I'll let her chime in if I don't have this right, was that they asked questions as they're closing out. What kinds of things did you find that you needed after you graduated that maybe you didn't learn when you were in school? And see, by probing that way, you're finding out where are some gaps, where are some things that you might want to implement in your instructional plan to help students be better prepared for post-school outcomes. And I think another question that I think that they asked was around, are there any additional connections that you need now? Are there any additional resources that you need now that we, might be able to provide you with to help you with whatever your plan is as you have exited school? Tracy, I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm going to give you an opportunity if you want to add in a little bit that you've learned, since you are one of the ones who call every year. So you've had quite a bit of practice with this.
Thanks, Beverly. I think you said it all perfectly. I think just trying to make it a conversation and making sure that you address that if they have any questions before you go and if they need any services.
Okay, thank you, Tracy, for sharing that. So that's been very helpful for us to kind of know how some other districts have handled this process. Just keep in mind that when you are gathering the information, again, you can't put half of it in and save it and come back to it later. So that's why it's very important that you have a mechanism to record the responses and then have someone enter those in for you. Okay, and so now we're going to take a pause for just a minute and see if you have any questions about what we've shared with you up to this point. Kelly, I'm going to check the chat box for us. It looks like we've got some things in here. And
yeah, if you want, I can read you the questions. I think most of them are going to be for you.
Okay.
So can we speak with a parent if the student is unavailable?
Yes. You may speak with someone else to get that information if they are someone who is familiar with the student.
Okay. And are we collecting data on 1 year of graduate students or students over 5 years? And no, we have a 5-year plan, but you're only calling students who graduated this year in the 1920 school year. So the 5-year plan that you see out there is just who's going to be on the list to make calls in the next 5 years. And would contacts through email be acceptable? If I can't talk to them by phone, can I put the questions in an email?
Well,
Beverly, did you-
Yeah, I heard the question. You know, it takes me a minute to get it processed and thinking that through. I would think that I wouldn't want to make that as a practice for everyone. But if you run into a situation where you can't make contact with them for whatever reason, you can't get anyone to talk to you about the student, I think that personal contact is always your best bet to go, because as Tracy said, it really is a conversation and you're trying to probe and get, you know, as much information as you can, which I don't know that they'd be accurate in their interpretation of what you're asking them, because those A, B, and C are so, you know, they're specific about what you're capturing, and I don't think our students are going to understand the distinction between those. So I'd be very hesitant to make that a practice. I hope that answers the question. I'm not keen on it, I guess, is what I'm saying. Let's see. Do we have another question?
And I think you'd already answered this, but for certificate or extend students who have a guardian, can we speak with the guardian?
Yes, you may speak with the guardian.
And if a student starts college after high school, then stops to work, which is counted?
I think what you look at is reference that one pager sheet that I entered into the chat box. And again, we'll send it to you as we send out information to you through the email. But just look at the categories, because it gives you specifically if they do something within a time frame, or if they complete one course, or if they complete 90 days, it gives you some parameters there. So just kind of look at that chart and kind of answer according to the parameters that it gives you. I think that will help you with that piece of it.
And if the interviewee doesn't want to answer all of the questions, but provides some information, can we just enter what they give us? Example, they tell us where they are working, but not how many hours or wages.
Yeah, I think that one, what really we need is as much information as we can get, because that determines which of the categories, the A, B, or C, they're counted in, and that gives us more accurate data. If we don't put it in correctly, then it's going to throw off what we're trying to capture. But sometimes you can ask some probing questions to kind of figure out how many hours they're working and what their wages are. So sometimes you just probing a little deeper, you can get those answers. They may not really understand that they're making minimum wage or that sort of thing. But if you know that they're working at a certain establishment, you know that they're required to pay minimum wage, that sort of thing. Then, you know, you can answer that question because you know based on where they're working. So I think you kind of have to get some probing questions yourself kind of going to kind of figure out what the responses are going to be.
Okay. And the last question is, how do we document no response? And that is an option after you enter the demographic information. If you're unable to get a response, one of the options is no response, and it would end the survey for you. That's the last question I see, Beverly.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, so if there aren't any other questions, we have our contact information. Is that correct? In case you think of something later.
That's correct. And again, you can email me if you'd like your data uploaded for you. If I do upload it, I would still encourage you to go ahead and pull your exit count and just compare it to make sure that what I've got is what you've got. And if you have any questions, feel free to shoot me an email. And then again, we've posted our resources on the link on the last page. And Beverly, if we want to post the stuff that you've dropped in the chat, we can also add that to the resources page.
Yes, that'd be great.
Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, everyone.